This Kathopanishad is one of the most brilliant Upanishad and is a very special Upanishad where sadhana is emphasized right from the beginning to the end. We may think of Vedanta as a philosophy, but Kathopanishad is very emphatic to point out time and again that it is not a philosophy. It is to be practiced. It emphasizes the sadhana which will make us actualize whatever is stated there. Finally we find that the philosophy becomes gauna, it becomes secondary. The sadhana, the ultimate of which is the purity of the mind, shuddha chittata, that becomes the primary goal of the Upanishad. That is the goal of all Upanishads, but Kathopanishad specializes in emphasizing it, especially through a story, through the background of a story, because when we read just the shlokas and the philosophy, although they also repeatedly emphasize the practice, the sadhana, but we often miss it. So Kathopanishad does not leave it to ourselves that you just, whether you miss it or not, it will not care for that. Shruti Mata, we call the scriptures as Shruti Mata because it is more than our mother who takes care that we are led to the final goal of our life. So Shruti Mata has been very, very tender and loving in Kathopanishad to tell us that, oh seekers, you should not miss the goal. It is not Panditya, it is not philosophy, it is purity of your mind that has to be cared for, that has to be attended to right from the beginning to the end. You have to have the purity of the mind, otherwise all your learning, all your tapasya, austerities, your brahmacharya or whatnot, everything will become futile. Time and again through each shloka it goes on emphasizing so that it is hammered into our brain, provided we are receptive, provided we listen to the voice. It's in the Shanti Mantra itself, if we are careful, we will find various significant points, of which 3 I will touch upon. One is the speciality of this Shanti Patha, where they are using Saha Nau Avatu, Saha Nau Bhunaktu, that Dvivachana. Why suddenly Dvivachana is being used? Who are the two persons? We know that they are referring to the teacher and the student. The Dvivachana is used for the teacher and the student. Let both of us, the teacher and the student, be protected. But why? All our Vedic mantras, they always speak about us, not about two. Ano bhadraha kratavo yantu vishvataha sarve bhavantu sukhinaha. Everywhere we are speaking about the whole world, not even our country alone. So why this Kathopanishad has been so constricted in restricting its benedictory invocation to only two who are reading the Kathopanishad? The speaker and the listener, or the teacher and the student, the Acharya and the Shishya, or Guru and the Shishya. We have to be deep in our understanding. It is, our Upanishads cannot be constricted. Upanishads' sole aim to make us is to make us universal. So how can in the first Shanti Patha, the fundamental shloka, it can be constricted? It can never be. When we look into it, we find that this two, this prayer for the two, is very important. Because where from these Upanishads have come down to us? They were composed thousands and thousands of years back. We don't know when. Much, much before the history was, our history has started. And not only that, our civilization has evolved these Upanishads to this final, refined, excellent form. How many yugas it might have taken in doing it, we don't know. Even now, how are we getting the Upanishads? It is not only through the books. The books cannot give us the final jnana. The jnana resides in the knower. The book is only secondary. If we read the book, we will not understand what is jnana. That is why again and again it is said that Guru Mukhat Shravanam, or in Kathopanishad itself, Yama will tell Nachiketa that Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. Arise, awake. Look for the Vara, the Shrestha. Prapya Varan Nibodhata. Understand. Nishkarshena. Until you are doubt free. Nibodhata. It is not only bodhata, nibodhata. You have to understand still till the last remnant of doubt is also removed. Until you become doubt free, doubtless. Remain with the Vara and try to understand what is the truth. Why? Because Shurasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgam pathastad kavayo vadanti. Who are the kavis? The kavis are the krantadashis who have known the truth, who know what it is to know the truth and how it is to get rid of the bondage of the world. They have been saying that Shurasya dhara, it is like the razor's edge. Nishita duratyaya durgam pathastad. It is difficult to cross. Not only it is difficult to cross, it is difficult to tread on. So, definitely you need a help. A person who has walked over this razor's edge will be able to guide you. So, first you awake and arise to this necessity, to this need of the human being to look for a Vara, a Shrestha, a Guru, to whom you can go and surrender, and he will take you to the ultimate goal. Here comes the sadhana, because our spirituality starts from maybe listening some lecture somewhere, reading some scriptures, chanting some shlokas, doing some puja. We go to various lectures, listen to various speakers, but what do? Wherever we like, we accept it. Whatever we don't like, we reject it. We listen to various sannyasins, various gurus, various acharyas, and screen their talks. Some of them we like, some of them we don't like. We accept whatever we like and try to understand the goal ourselves. What is acting in our accepting certain things and rejecting certain things? That means we think that our intelligence is supreme. Although we are listening to the Mahatmas, in accepting their words, who is making the judgment? Our own intelligence. So, we have given our intelligence the supreme position, and that is always making the judgment of what is to be accepted, what is not to be accepted. Till this phase continues, we are not a wholesome seeker. We look for something, but we go around until we become helpless. We start feeling helpless. That our intelligence, my intelligence, is not to find out the truth. I am not able to find out. The Shastras speak in so many ways, so many contradictory shlokas, so many contradictory statements. Then how can I know what is the truth? That is the time if we have Shraddha on our Mahatmas, on our Shastras, then we remember that the Shastras, the Mahatmas, they speak about Guru, Acharya, that you go to the Vara and ask him humbly. Pariprashnena sevaya, Mundakopanishad says. Humbly, because unless we are humble, again our intelligence will be given the supreme position. We may go to an Acharya, do prostration, ask him certain question, but what he replies, again we will judge his reply with our own intelligence. So we will give our intelligence the supreme position there, not his words. So until we are fed up with our intelligence, we don't realize that we have to go to somebody and ask him humbly, with humility. What does this humility mean? The humility means that I accept that, O Acharya, O Guru, you know about myself also better than I know about myself. That is where lies my auspicious goal. What am I to do as sadhana? That you know better than what I can understand or my intelligence can guide me. This, unless this superior position of the Guru is accepted, we are not able to walk on the path. As we often say that, suppose we are thirsty, we are walking in a desert, we don't know where lies water, nobody is there to tell us where we can find some water. Suddenly, we find another person coming from the other direction, and he seems to be not suffering from thirst, quite fulfilled and happy. Then naturally, will not our mind think that, Arey, I am suffering from thirst and he is in the same desert, but he is not suffering? What is the mystery? Should I not go and ask that, where from did you get water? Did you get any water? Where from did you get? You look quite all right. You don't look thirsty. Like that, in the desert of our samsara, we always see long faces, depressed faces, dejected faces. If ever we see somebody who in calamity also looks smiling, fulfilled, happy, then should we not go and inquire where lies the key to his happiness? That even when we are surrounded by death, surrounded by calamity, that person does not seem to be affected by the world at all. Or when we were surrounded by greed for riches or anything, that person doesn't seem to be attracted by the lucrative things of the world. So what is the mystery behind it? The thirsty person goes and asks the other person, did you get any water? Where from did you get? And the person tells him that, yes, I got water. There is sweet water available there. I cannot show you from here, but you go, you walk along this path, and far away you can see that palm tree. You go near that tree, and then you look down, you will find a beautiful pond there. You go and you quench your thirst there. It is sweet water. I have drunk from there. Please go along the path I am telling you. Now suppose this man does not have faith in the word of the other person. Where from will he have the faith? He has to make the first judgment that this man does not look thirsty. This man looks fulfilled. On that basis he has to make the judgment whether I shall listen to this man or not. But once I have taken it that this man has got water, I have understood and I have faith in his words, then I have to walk the way he said. After going half the distance, the cross thoughts should not come to my mind that, Arey, maybe that person is misleading me. There is no water here. I will become all the more thirsty walking along this way. Rather, I get back to my old path and walk along go my own way. Then, will he get his thirst quenched? He will not. Here also, we have to pick up the Vara, the Shrestha, and once we have found the Vara, we have to trust his words, his directions, his guidance, until we reach the palm tree and look down and see the pond ourselves. We have to see the pond. He cannot see the ponds for us. He can show us the way. We have to walk the way he mentioned, and then only we will be able to see the way. There lies the real seekerhood. There lies the humility. So, the real knowledge that has to come from the Guru, because reading the Shastras, we will try to understand the Shastras with our own interpretation. But a Guru is one who has done the experiment with the Shastras in our life. There is a difference between all other subjects and our Brahma Vidya or Upanishadic knowledge or spiritual jnana. All other subjects we can learn with our intelligence alone. We can go to a teacher, he will teach us, or we can read the books, we will know from the books, and we can master the subject. No purity is called for, no transformation of the being is called for. A great scientist need not be a very pure-hearted person. He can even be a criminal. A great physicist can even be a criminal. He might be haunted by all the vices of the world. That will not prevent his scientific talent. But in spirituality it is not so. Because our scriptures do not attain jnana, obtain only as a philosophy. Then it is better to go to the university and study Vedanta there and know what is written in Vedanta. That is not accepted as a knowledge. The knowledge is when we do the experiment ourselves in our life and compare with the knowledge stated in the scriptures and find that it is true, then only it becomes a true knowledge. As before my lecture, our Swamiji introduced that I was a scientist, I was a physicist, and at the same time I had interest in spirituality also right from my birth, so to say, as far as back my memory goes. So I had been studying the scriptures right from childhood, maybe Viveka Chudamani or Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga. And I used to form my own concept about the truth according to my knowledge of science and knowledge of spiritual Shastras. Then when I joined PhD, I had ample time and I had time to go deeply through some of the scriptural texts and compare whatever I have thought about the truth. And I found that I am not able to go beyond some contradictory concepts. I am not able to resolve the contradictions myself. I tried this way, that way. I was not ready to lose my own concept of truth. I thought that we, in the present world with our scientific logical mind, should be able to understand the Shastras better in a different manner. We need not take to the logic of the ancient people. But it took me finally to a deadlock. I could not resolve the contradictions. That is the time I remembered about Baba. That's our Swamiji, Swami Bhumananda Tirthaji Maharaj, had spoken about Baba, who lived in near Calcutta, about 100 kilometers, 100 miles away. So I could go and ask him, what is the truth? I went and met Baba and asked him that this is what I have thought about truth and this is my understanding. I even had the audacity to explain the truth in two manners, that this is one model and this is another model, second model. I don't know which model is true. I have understood in these two models, I don't know which is true. and I have finally haunted by a contradiction. You can tell me, what am I supposed to do? Baba patiently listened to all that and then finally said that, my dear son, in your physics laboratory, what do? You do experiment. Before that, you have learnt all the theories. You have learnt Newton's laws, you have learnt Einstein's laws, and so many other things. But until you do it in your laboratory, the experiment which proves the laws, which are based on the laws, until you see it yourself with your objective, with your objects, you won't have a consolidated knowledge. You will not know what is the truth. You will be remaining with your theory. What you have so far learned from the Shastras, from other writings, it is all you can think of theory. What you have to do now, you have learnt enough of theory. What you have to do now is to enter the laboratory and start doing the experiment yourself. I understood the meaning of Diksha. Baba said, initiating you and putting you in the laboratory is called Diksha. Now, this experiment is not like the other experiments of science, because in science we experiment with the objects and we can do the experiments as many number of times as we want. We can compare and we can find out whether it is true or not, whatever is stated. In this spiritualities, in this sadhana, it is a subjective experiment. The experimental object is our own being, is our own mind and intelligence. We have to do the experiment with our own mind and intelligence. We ourselves are the object of experiment. So, the experimental result will be from each life of a sadhak. Each sadhaka lives his life, and that life lived is the experimental result of one experiment performed. Like that, from time immemorial, so many sadhakas have done the experiment. They have recorded their experiences. They have recorded what they have learned, what is wrong, what were the pitfalls, and what were the guiding stars in their life. They have recorded. That is how the Shastras have come. They have recorded all these things for the benefit of the posterity. So, here each life will be an experiment, and the result we have to compare with the Shastras. That is how our sadhana is built up. I diverted a lot, starting with the Shanti mantra. I have not even started Kathopanishad, although I have said some slokas from Kathopanishad. I don't know what justice can be done in 1 hour to this Kathopanishad, but I shall try to point out a fundamental thought in this. In the Shanti mantra, this now is used for the teacher and the student, because without this parampara of Guru Shishya parampara, we say, this knowledge would not have been available. To make the knowledge available, that Guru Shishya parampara had been continuing since eternity, since time immemorial. Without that, we would not have got this Brahma Vidya today. So naturally, when we feel that we are grateful to have this Brahma Vidya, it has rid us of all the sufferings of our life, it has satiated our knowledge, cravings for knowledge, it has given us the greatest of happiness, then should we not be grateful for the people who have handed it down to us? Without this Guru Shishya parampara, we would not have got this knowledge, because the book is like the picture of a fire. If we take a picture of a fire, with that picture, can we cook our food? Can we burn our dead bodies? Can we get the warmth from there? So the books are like the picture of the fire. It has only described it. But when the book is followed and a life is lived according to that, it becomes a living fire for the person who has lived the knowledge. So our knowledge, our Upanishadic knowledge is the living knowledge. This is being stressed again and again throughout the Upanishad and through Bhagavata also. Everywhere they have emphasized Mahatma and people who are living this knowledge. So naturally, understanding the greatness, the contribution of this parampara, Guru Shishya parampara, through which the Brahma Vidya lives and becomes preserved and promoted, naturally we are supposed to pray that let us both be preserved, let us both be nourished well, protected well, because without that protection, Brahma Vidya will not be preserved. So it is a prayer for the Brahma Vidya, not a constricted prayer for ourselves. There lies the greatness of the prayer. Let the Brahma Vidya live through eternity. That is the prayer. Also, there is a statement in the Shanti Mantra which says, Nau adhitam tejasvi bhavatu. Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryam karavavahai. Now adhitam tejasvi bhavatu. Whatever we have learnt, let it become tejasvi. That is, it should not remain an intellectual knowledge, a bookish knowledge. When we live the knowledge, it becomes tejasvi. Also it says, Ma vidvishavahai. That is also very special in all the Shanti Mantras. This kind of statement is not found generally. Ma vidvishavahai. Let us not be intolerant to each other. That is, between the Guru and the Shishya, they are praying that let us not be intolerant to each other. People may ask immediately, where is the question of becoming intolerant? The Guru is always merciful and the Shishya is always devoted to the Guru. But any real sadhak will know that there is enough scope for becoming intolerant. Because it is not a knowledge as it is given in the university. This knowledge, each step, it calls for transformation of our character, transformation of our being, purification of our mind, and our ego at each step will prevent this purificatory process. So the Guru has to point out where we need purification, where we need correction, and ego will each time come up and say, my Guru has not understood me properly, he has misunderstood me, or he is telling me for nothing, again and again he is condemning me, he is belittling me. All these problems will come. So, for a sadhak, this Ma vidvishavahai is also very important. I wanted to point out these two statements because they are right in the beginning pointing out what happens to a real sadhak. They are not presenting a philosophy. Philosophy is there, but philosophy is not the fundamental point here. The sadhana is the fundamental point. Now, they are taking the help of a story in this. A very simple story, and which is mixed with some imaginary features also. We have to discriminate well and find out what is to be taken from this. The imagery may make us though, oh, these are not all true, these are all mythological. No, the story might be mythological, but what are they pointing out through the story? We have to try to understand. So they are taking the story of a small boy Nachiketa and his father Vajasravas to contrast where lies the fitness of a seeker of jnana or Brahma Vidya and who is fit and who is unfit. They have beautifully taken a contrasting figure of a father and a son. The father is learned. He is a ritualist. He has done many yagas through his life. And finally he is doing one of the greatest yagas, Vishwajit, which will take him to a heaven. according to the Vedas. And the son, he has learned some of the statements of the Shastras, maybe from his father alone. He is a student of his father also, in his Gurukula. But what happens during that yaga, the scene shows that the father, after the yaga is performed, he is gifting the priests all the useless cows from his cattle shed. He is giving cows which are having defective organs, which will never yield, which will never calve. Rather than gifting such cows, it is actually clearing his cowshed of the useless elements. And to whom he is giving? He is giving to the priests who have performed the yaga. Now the Vedas have prescribed the yagas that if you perform this yaga, you will go to the heaven. But they have prescribed the principles of the yaga also, what you should do during the yaga and after the yaga. About gifting, they have prescribed Shriyadeyam, Hriyadeyam, Shraddhayadeyam, all these things are mentioned there. When you gift something, you have to gift it with Shri, with humility, with Shraddha. Unless you do all these things, the purpose will not be fulfilled. Let us understand, a person will do the yaga which will take him to heaven only when he is desirous of heaven. He will not do the yaga which will take him to heaven unless he himself is desirous of heaven. Why should he do it? He will do only if he wants to go to heaven. But in doing that yaga, if it performs in a manner which is violating all the principles stated in the very same Vedas, in the very same scripture, then will he be taken to heaven or to hell? So his ritual becomes self-defeating in its way. It is self-defeating. Out of greed for heaven, he is doing, out of desire for heaven, he is doing the yaga. But he is not able to get rid of the greed for his ihalaukik, that is the worldly properties also. He is not able to gift it liberally to the people to whom he should gift. In the process, he loses both the Ihaloka and Paraloka. Now, Nachiketa, seeing his father gifting all those items, the Upanishad says, Shraddha Avivesha. That is in Nachiketa's mind, Shraddha dawned. This one word, Shraddha, there is no end to it. We can meditate on the word throughout our life perhaps. We will get more and more jewels from it. It will never end. That is why Bhagavad Gita says, Shraddha mayoyam purushaha yo yat shraddhaha saeva saha. We are made of our Shraddha, our attention, our application, on which, what are the things we are giving the supreme position. Depending on that, our life will be led. Whatever we are made of our Shraddha, our attention, our application, our things of supreme interest. So they say, Shraddha Avivesha. Nachiketa's mind, Shraddha dawned. What is this Shraddha? This is the Shraddha for the Acharya and Shastra Vakya. Whatever he has learnt about the sayings of the scriptures, sayings of the Mahatmas, he had faith in that. He believed in that. They are great people. Whatever they have said is true. But why is my father not practicing that? My father is failing in abiding by the statements of the Mahatmas, of the scriptures. He is gifting wrongly, and according to the statements, in such a case, the person will be taken to hell. Now, the Upanishad starts with the word Ushan Havai Vajashravasaha. Ushan. The first word of the Upanishad is Ushan. Ushan means desirous of. we can easily understand where lies the emphasis of the Upanishad. The emphasis is on desire, Ushan. That Nachiketa's father was smitten with desire. So desire is the focus. And at the end, the Upanishad says, Yada sarve pramuchyante kamayasya hridishritaha athamatyo amrito bhavati atra brahma samashnute. When all the desires from our heart are cut asunder, then the Maranashila Manushya, the Matya, the mortal man becomes immortal. Atra Brahma Samashnute. He realizes the truth, the Brahman, here itself, not in any other world. He does not have to go in any other world. So the emphasis right from the beginning is on desire. Ushan havai vajas shavasaha. Nachiketa's father was smitten with desire. And out of greed, out of desire for heaven, he was doing the ritual. And the ritual also he was failing to do perfectly because of his greed for the worldly material objects, because he did not want to sacrifice his good cows from the cowshed. He was only gifting the useless cows, making his journey to the hell clean. Small child, 7-year-old or 8-year-old Nachiketa could understand the grave error his father was doing. How could Nachiketa understand? Because of the purity of the mind, because of his humility. His intelligence was humble, his mind was pure. That is why the statements of the rishis of the scriptures dawned easily with the true implication in his mind, which failed to dawn in his father's mind. Not that it was not there. His inner voice must have been there, but he was not able to hear it or refusing to hear it because of his desire, because of his greed, because of his attraction for the worldly objects as well as the other worldly attainments. So, right from the beginning, they are pointing out that we will find that within 4 shlokas, Nachiketa's father is never spoken of after the 4th shloka. That is, the character of Nachiketa's father played its role and it went off. After that, it is only Nachiketa who went to the Yama, who plays the role of Acharya, and he receives the knowledge from the Acharya. So, in saying that, what they are showing is that Nachiketa's father was not fit for Brahma Vidya, whereas Nachiketa was fit for Brahma Vidya, fit for Jnana. Now, how Nachiketa is fit for Jnana, that they have shown shloka after shloka. If we are attentive, we can find out what are the things. Now, seeing the useless cow being given to the priests, Nachiketa felt very sorry that by this behavior of my father, he will be taken to the hell. Now, how am I to save him from the hell? He was a good boy. He was a Shuddha Chitta boy. So he could not think any other way. He thought that how my father can be saved. And he went to the father. He thought about it, that I am not a bad Shishya, I am a good Shishya, etc. So many things are there. Then finally, he thought that gifting a son, that to a good son, is the greatest gift a father can give. Now suppose my father has done so many mistakes by gifting wrong items to the priest. He can be saved if he gifts his son to the priest. That will offset his past.